Hello, I am Michele Leclaire, Executive Director at Buckham Gallery. Today, I am joined by Bill Davis, whose exhibition, No Darkened Sight, is on view through August 28th. Additionally, his work may be viewed online on our website at buckhamgallery.org. First, I would like to say thank you to the individuals and organizations who support Buckham Gallery, including the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Greater Flint Arts Council Share Art Genesee Grant Program made possible by the Genesee County Arts Education and Cultural Enrichment Millage Funds, your tax dollars at work. Introduction. Bill Davis has worked on 6 continents to focus on sustainability and the human conditions that embrace or oppose it. His work mediates on public health and personal well-being, informed through the perspective of biography, terrestrial stewardship, and species extinction. Davis lives and works near the Great Lakes in Michigan. His photographs are exhibited internationally and in museums and private collections in the US and abroad. He has received many awards, including the 2021 Western Michigan University Climate Change Teaching Fellowship. Welcome, Bill. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about your work and your photography.
It's great to be here online.
Yeah, I wanted to start our conversation today by asking you something from your artist statement. So it starts with, Robert Frank said, the photograph must contain the humanity of the moment and convey a vision. And in quote, you say, I exhibit humanity's vision for itself. Can you please elaborate, what you mean by this statement?
Sure. First, thanks for doing this, and thanks to Flint and all of the nice responses that they provided at the last art hop or gallery walk. I'm sorry I couldn't be there for that. Michele, thank you also for hosting this interview and installing the work. I think it looks great. Let me try to elaborate for you then. The exhibition of humanity's vision for itself. I think Robert Frank is a hero for a lot of people, an artist, of course, myself included. I'm a big fan of his work, but also of his lifestyle and his message. So there are a lot of quotes, but I think this one stands out and is a real great bridge between lifestyle, kind of the triangle of lifestyle and humanity and art. So when I say this is kind of a project that exhibits humanity's vision for itself, I'm kind of like in a Nietzschean way holding a mirror up to society and going out with my camera, using the Bortle dark sky scale as a way to scout for locations, and using the camera as I might use a mirror. Right? You won't see people, right? You will see the implication of people in my work. So like you may not see evidence of humanity, right? If we think that people are the fundamental evidence for humanity, there are other examples of humanity's effect and presence that I'm interested in, right? So when I say this is humanity's vision for itself, part of that vision for me is in discovering and scouting and traveling to locations where there's, in a way, a metaphorical footprint of light. And so, like, I could have called this project, I mean, it's called No Darkened Sight, but I could have said, this is the light pollution project, or this is the light management project, or this is the artificial light footprint investigation, right? But I think that humanity gets in the way of itself. I think that it has a lot of good intentions that are not measured too carefully. And I'm interested through this work in highlighting some of the consequential decisions that we make that are having an effect on us. And in a way, this is our vision amplified, specifically through artificial light in spaces that are adversely affected by the impact of our human presence, even if it's something we invented and we're not standing in that place. What I want, one of the messages of the work is that I want people to kind of understand that, and I think people get this, I want people to understand that the impact can be measured in variable ways. And for me, as a photographer, I'm interested in the impact that our absence has instead of the impact that our presence has. Because I know that sounds a bit counterintuitive, but we're never really absent,
Right.
right? So we have a presence, and I'm interested in that kind of invisible presence that is expressed through light. I'll give you a quick example. Let me kind of bring it back down to earth. So this morning I was driving quite early. And of course, when you're driving early and the sun's not up, you need light. I'm not opposed to artificial light. I want to make that kind of clear. It has some benefits that are protective, right? And better secure safety and longevity, right? For the human condition. I'm opposed to the overabundance of it and the overuse. So the headlights on a car allow me, although, to unsustainably drive somewhere at night or in the early morning to see and avoid having a car accident, for example. So those are necessary examples of artificial light. But I passed by stoplights, right, that obviously are there to organize a civil society. But then I also passed by buildings like nature center preschools, hotels, hospitals, and other places that were lighting up their signs. Literally, it's called uplighting. So the lights go on the ground and they go straight up into the troposphere, right? The atmosphere on planet Earth, or ground zero. And I thought, well, I don't need to know that right now, this is a place where young people go to school. This is a place where people may go to shop, even though it's closed. This is a place where people may go to exercise. This is a place where people may go to study. And I thought, wow, so much light is being used to advertise, to establish a footprint. And I thought, this is territorial. We're using light to establish turf in a way, almost the way maybe dogs establish their turf, So I can continue to have revelations, but that'd be an example. Like humanity develops systems that obstruct our well-being. So we're really imperfect that way.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. So the idea of taking that statement, I was curious with the vision for itself. Is it the vision for itself going forward, or the view of itself, its personal vision? So it's kind of not necessarily maybe humanity's purpose or direction intentionally, but you're showing where it is going, sort of showing the consequences, I guess. What brought you to No Dark in Sight, Light and the Night It Transforms? How did you embrace this project?
So I always think of people, places, and things. And so when it comes to people who brought me to this, some know and some don't. So a couple of years ago, I think it was 2013, I had the opportunity to briefly meet Bill McKibben, and he came to Southwest Michigan, and it was just inspirational to get a moment with a couple of other people just to speak with him. He's a very busy guy, and I really wanted to, in a way, build on that moment. And so I went on to curate a couple of exhibitions that honored his message, right? He started 360.org, and he's a real pioneer, and I think a real important leader and voice in, we kind of a contemporary environmental movement. And that's only one of three issues with sustainability. When I think about the complicated nature of trying to do a project sustainably on sustainability. You can talk about it, but can you sustainably talk about it? You can do something that reflects sustainability, but can you sustainably do something that reflects sustainability? And I'll get into that a little bit more. Another person who helped me kind of meditate on this was Dr. Harold Glasser, and he was the executive director for the Office for Sustainability at Western Michigan University. And he challenged me just to stand on my back porch and start to think about the impact that my discipline may have on the planet or on people's lives or on the economy. And that's the three tiers. Economic, social, and environmental issues that surround the kind of this circle of sustainability. So I did, and it hit me. I'm like, well, photography is writing with light. That's what it means to write with light. And I've been at this since I was 14, so I'm 30, way over 30 years into a commitment in my life towards a discipline that was flawed. So I wanted to use this project as a way, No Dark in Sight, to look at the flaws in what I thought was an otherwise kind of perfect discipline. And light became a natural place to investigate because basically, photography, if you just want to boil it down, is time and light, right? And then a whole bunch of other stuff on top of that. So time didn't really work for me, but I thought light, well, there's two forms of light, right? There's natural and unnatural, right? So there's manufactured light or artificial light, synthetic, right? And then there's sunlight. And I think everybody knows the benefits and consequences of sunlight, but I became a little more interested in the consequences of artificial light. And so what brought me to No Dark in Sight were, basically these two people, Bill McKibben and Dr. Glasser and Harold Glasser. And then also the kind of critique of my own discipline. And I thought, well, okay, quality of light seems to affect quality of life. And when the night looks this bright, and it looks like, when night looks like day, we've got a problem. So I began to photograph, I made terrible photographs. I didn't like any of them for a long time, for a couple of months, around my neighborhood and other places. That's so normal. You just got to break the ice and then let it freeze over and then break it again, which isn't too hard to do in the middle of winter. But I began to think about the consequences of light at night. And 5 years later, I'm talking with you about it, and people keep asking, like, "Are you done with this yet? Like, is this over? Are you finished with this?" And I keep saying, "Well, are you done lighting the night? Are we done installing more uplighting? Because I don't think we are. Like, would I like to be? Absolutely. I'd love to be done with this project. But the problem is that the project tracks with technology and new lighting installations, right? So like when we're done lighting the world up, then maybe the project will come to a conclusion. But I want it to be over. I just keep finding things and photographing them and saying, oh, there's another one, So I stay in it and I continue to be drawn to it for those reasons.
Yeah. Well, let me bring up this picture, because when we think about work dealing with light pollution, we often think about these sort of urban settings, light pollution as being this urban problem. But here we have is that Vegas, Caesar's Palace, and then in Chicago. Yeah. But we also see in your work, there's a lot of natural and unnatural subjects overlit in this work, and there's so many diverse sites and places. So how do you, choose where you're going and photographing?
So unfortunately, this is a really easy, unfortunately and fortunately, this is an easy project to work on because light pollution is everywhere in the developed world. 99% of the United States is affected by it. So like, what do I choose? Well, for me, obviously, when I first started to ideate, right, and to be mindful about, where do I go? Where do I find light at night? I literally went outside on my front doorstep and just started photographing streetlights. And then I kind of moved beyond that. And Las Vegas, the image that you see on the left, Caesar's Palace, that was a natural place for anyone to go. Like, if you want to do a project on artificial light, or gamble, go to Vegas, right? And one of the things that I love to say, and I won a $1 bet that I would not gamble. And so it's the only bet I ever took in going to Vegas. But people ask, they're like, so congratulations, I guess you applied for this grant, you got it, and now where are you going? Vegas. And it was bizarre, but it was the right place to be. But oddly, when I used, I think I mentioned this earlier, I used the Bortle dark sky, a night sky brightness indicator. It's a scale of 1 to 9 for cities that are kind of overly lit at night, unnecessarily lit, for light pollution, basically. And let's face it, light pollution interrupts the circadian rhythm. Light pollution interrupts the food chain. Light pollution interrupts our kind of a natural workflow. Light pollution is a huge threat to personal health and well-being. It has many kind of layers to its effects. And as far as deciding where to go and what to shoot, Chicago was another natural place, as you see on the right. But it speaks to the kind of homogenization of cities and places in the United States, because I also found that where I live, in a town of 72,000 people, right, near the Great Lakes, which are very dark. That's about the only place you're going to see natural darkness at night. It's as bright as it is in Vegas, according to this light pollution kind of satellite chart. So, the obvious large cities, right, of Chicago, Philadelphia, Miami, you can look at a night sky light pollution map and identify cities, right? They just based on where they are, whether it's Columbus, Ohio, or Phoenix, San Francisco, New York City, or smaller towns, Dayton, Piqua, Ohio, Memphis, Tennessee. So light pollution is easy to find. And when I'm looking for subjects, it usually just requires me going on foot and trying to um, exhibit humanity's vision for itself. But I'm also interested in how we use personal light. There's public light and there's personal light. And so I often find people lighting their own bodies. And
Mhm.
that's, we can wear lights now. And I've made not great photographs of people completely lit up. And I would think you don't even need a cup of coffee after walking around with lights all over yourself. Literally, they were dressed like Christmas trees. Um, and so, like in the bottom right image, that's near the Martin Luther King Memorial. Those are just lights in a trailing photograph of a long exposure of someone who lit their bike up, and they just happened to bicycle right through the middle of these faux mountains. So I can find it, and I'm interested also to finish. Look, I'm this is hard, right? But I'm often criticized, not in a bad way. A good critique is to say, well, why do you shoot? Why do you have natural subject matter and unnatural subject matter, right? Why do we see organic and inorganic? Well, you're not really, you see it because it's lit. Do you understand? Like, that's why you see it, because it's the light reflecting off of it that I'm photographing. So we need, and this is really critical, right? Especially in photography and other disciplines, we need a new way of talking about art that it first involves indicating, measuring, framing its potential to make us more mindful of our human impact. I'm a little fatigued of the standard ways of critiquing and talking about art. And I have big grandiose plans for how I would like to conquer the world with critiques that are more mindful and how do I want to centered around all living things than centered around what we're looking at as subject matter in the photograph. It's easy to talk about these things, but we need to start with the impact that it has on communities, the impact that it has on the environment, and the impact it has on the economy, things that we don't see in the photograph. And I wish that that message could get through to other reviewers of my work, other people who write about it, other people who speak about it, because often they'll say, this work is everywhere, right? It's like ADD all over the wall, right? Well, yeah, it is totally. You got it right. Well, why do we see all these different things mixed up? Well, again, because we've decided as a society that they need to be lit, and that's where I step in.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. And the way you're capturing the light, think of as they're not the human physical presence there, you're catching the light presence. They almost seem like portraitures, not right, the standard like landscape kind of setting. They do seem to have centered it on and capture that center, at least with these two, they're not all that way, but the center object.
A lot of people, in training, in art, in visual art, center is often considered the death, right? You put something don't put it in the middle, right? Explore the edges. And I don't know how to say this in an upbeat kind of way, but a lot, like you're saying, I put it front and center. It's not hard to miss. You know what to look at. You know what the photographer saw. It's not a terribly difficult jigsaw puzzle to put together, right? There might be some mysteries because light tends to do that at night, right? Because it's not natural. But the nature of the work is to kind of, in a way, invisibly suggest that we need to put this front and center. And if
Mhm.
center is in classical training death, there are organisms, there is wildlife, there is biodiversity that is very confused by this light. It makes no sense to them, and they're part of a larger biodiverse chain that becomes broken. And when we break a chain, one bad link will ruin the integrity of the whole thing. So yeah, light in a way is deadly.
Mhm.
Maybe, and I should also say that it's drip feeds. Hmm, poison is a heavy word to use, but it's a bit of a pretty poison. You know, it drip feeds poison into our kind of chronobiology.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
You know, scientists call this art and artists call this science, and no one agrees. No one is like, it's funny. I mean, and people laugh, and I do too. It's like, well, okay.
So light pollution is mostly portrayed as an environmental threat, but can you explain what discoveries you made about the social and economic impact?
It's easy to see the environmental threat, right? Um, and I think it's whether it's light pollution, or whether it's air pollution, whether it's water pollution. Uh, in Flint, Michigan is probably fortunately a great example of what happens when we intentionally overlook dangerous effects and impacts of humanity on ourselves, right? With the lead poisoning. Uh, and it's invisible, right? Like you can look at water and you may not be able to see what's in it. But sometime down the road, your body will remind you that you drank water at some point and you were drinking a lot more than water, right?
Mhm.
And sometime down the road, you may say, well, I took a night hike, right? And, you know, it was a lot more than just a night that may be drip feeding this toxicity, right, into your metaphorical and maybe literal bloodstream. Um, so the the can I ask you to repeat the question?
Yeah,
I'm running on a, go ahead,
of
little
course.
bit of sleep here.
So light pollution is mostly portrayed as an environmental threat.
Oh, yes,
But
okay.
can you explain the discoveries you made about the social and economic impact?
Yeah. Um, so the environmental impact is obvious. It's tactile almost. It's tangible. It's noticeable. It's very, very visible. The odd thing is that uh, we take it for granted. It's normal, right? In the turn of the 19th into 20th century, artificial light was a novel new thing. It had great promise to extend the day, to do it in a way where we wouldn't have to hire someone to go and put out the gas lights, right, that were in a community. So it had all of these wonderful kind of promises to it, um, but it affected the environment, right? And I wish that Edison and others had taken a step back and been a little more mindful and measured consequences they couldn't predict. And I know that sounds unfair, but we we really need a very holistic approach, which means that we need to think mindfully about the quote unquote gift of artificial light. Maybe artificial light is the original form of artificial intelligence,
Hmm.
right? And we're at a point right now in 2021 where artificial intelligence is yet to be fully experienced, rendered, what have you. And we should probably be talking much more about its consequences and imagining what they might be. So I would have liked to have seen a full imagination of the possible consequences, because right now it's easy for us to look and imagine how things like light at night will affect the atmosphere, will affect our health. look, many people in the medical community are maybe it's um, I don't know how if they're exactly able to prove it. It might be causal that it's carcinogenic, right? So like
Oh,
um, people who work the night shift can pay more dire consequences to living in unnatural ways, right? And exposing themselves to artificial light at night and not enjoying the benefits of natural light. However, more importantly, are the things that are harder to measure, right? So you mentioned the economy and then society, right? Like what's the social and economic impact? So the environment's the easy one. Socially, what I discovered, and this was great as a result of the project because I should have because it's right there in my face. It's just like a you know a lamp that you turn on at night. It's that simple to see. The things that are right in front of you, sometimes you have the hardest trouble seeing. Um, and so, for me, if I can do a quick analogy, I would imagine three doors, right? One door is, and three types of doors. One door is open, one door is closed and unlocked, and one door is closed and locked, right? Like, so metaphorically, like there are these three doors, and I wanted to get inside of to the other side of every door. The open one was the environment, no problem, right? Just walk on through because I can see it. Uh, and then for me, the closed door, right, that um, was unlocked, right? To me, that was the economy, right? Well, I have to pay an electric bill, right?
mhm.
So like when I use the light, I get this bill, and but where does the electricity come from, and how is it made, and do my personal decisions have any effect on that? How many lights do I have on at one time? I think anybody could probably have a conversation with someone who had a conversation with someone who may know someone who experienced the Depression in the United
Mhm.
States, right? And so that's an example of people who, at a time, because of personal economy, right, that closed door that's unlocked, made decisions to save money, right? You turn out all the lights, okay, or you just have one or two on. So that's something that's one step removed, right? We can kind of understand that our consumption of energy uh, has a price tag. And the more we use it, the higher the price is, whether it's getting gas in a car or light at night, artificial light at night. Um, Now, you can get all meta about this because some electric companies only burn 1.6 pounds of coal per kilowatt hour. Some energy companies are burning 3.2. So, like, which energy company? And it's very hard to find out. I mentioned Harold Glasser earlier, and he was a really excellent researcher and was able to clarify the difference in energy companies and which one burned less coal to give me the same amount of light at night. That's something that's very, I think, invisible and intentionally buried, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then the door that was closed and locked, if you will, to me is the social part, right? Like, oh, well, how, if it wasn't for artificial light, would we not have social lives at night, right? Like, would we all convene in one place in the dark, right? I mean, what is a social life at night without artificial light? But what I did discover in my journey, um, and this came from articles that I read in newspapers and community organizations and groups that objected to new lights that were installed that were on late at night, um, and then zoning, right? So uh, a lot of disadvantaged communities, disenfranchised communities become further compromised as a result of industrial light at night. So I would go to the places that are very light and bright, and um, some of those communities also were zoned for stadiums. And I just began to notice. I mean, first of all, in photography, sometimes you have to use a tripod because you don't have enough light. Places like Vegas, places like local universities and colleges
Mhm.
that would leave on a just insane amount and crazy amount of light at night. I could handhold the camera. That was the biggest shock to me. It's like it's broad daylight. I have an image that I made, you know, in a baseball diamond in the middle of the night, and it's just I was walking around like it was as bright as day. Um, so the economy is, you know, affected in, I should say, two ways. One is that you're spending. The other is that it's burning coal, right? So you pay an invisible price uh, because your energy consumption converts into not only light pollution, right? For example, if outdoor lighting, right?
Mhm.
But your exposure to light indoors at night also still has a negative impact, right? There's a reason the sun goes down, right? There's a reason why we close our eyes. But then there's the, the larger economy, right? That may be immeasurable, right? As a result of light pollution converting to air pollution, as a result of coal burning to create the energy we need to hopefully do something meaningful with artificial light. Because most times I don't think it is. I'm not opposed to it. Surgeons need it, cars need it. There are other reasons for it. But the areas that I think are most impacted in that closed locked door metaphor is that many communities that are very well lit at night are disadvantaged and disenfranchised even more, being zoned for both residents and industry. I was in Fowler, Indiana, and that's a pretty dark space at night. Um, but they have windmills, energy, the large
The
energy
wind
mills,
turbines, yeah.
wind turbines. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you know, I read an article and thought I got to go there, and I did in the middle of the night, and there were just blinking red lights everywhere, and the community just didn't even like those. So sometimes rural communities are most affected because they're already used to being in dark spaces, you
Mhm.
know. And it's very normal that people will say to me if they see a show, they'll be like, you know what, there's this really great place, and it's an international dark sky territory. It's way up in northern Michigan, and you should go there. Cool stars, and you can see all kinds of stuff. I'm like, I totally think that'd be great. And I could Google that, and there would just be pages and pages of really cool streaking stars with really neat, you know, trees in the foreground, you know. Um, but that's not the point, right? Like, talk to me about the places. You won't talk to me about that. You'll talk to me about the beautiful things,
Mhm.
but talk to me about the places that brought you to your town hall, right? Or to your city council 3 months ago when they installed that stadium, because I know y'all were there, you know.
Yeah.
I wasn't, but I know that it was reported. So I will also use newspaper articles and other things as a way to look for and scout for sites. But it's the three tiers, right? That matter. It's in those three doors. One's easy, one takes a little more work, and one you just gotta find the key to get inside and pay attention to it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. This is a little bit just off of some things you were talking about earlier about not just the work being about light, but also being about photography, about being time. You know, it takes light and time to make the photograph. And since we have Swarm up right now, I'm
Mhm.
imagining that was an extended exposure, was it? Are they like lightning bugs that did a time? No, okay, so what do we have
Yeah,
here?
right. Yeah.
I guess is what I need to know.
Yeah. So swarm on the left is that's a somewhat extended exposure. I'd have to go back and look, but it might be, I don't know, it might be about 3.5, 4, maybe 5 seconds.
Oh, okay.
And I think that the common, I don't know, you think of lightning bugs, right? As an example, but these are moths, right? In incredibly high contrast situation in with a very strong uplight, right? Which means it's pointed straight up into the
Mhm.
troposphere for a flag, an American flag, and you don't see the flag; it's off site, off camera. I drove by coincidentally; it was close to where I live, and I knew that I had to go back. So this is done on a tripod, and all of these moths that are in the light are, of course, attracted to it. And then if you look at or study, critique, right, nature, um, that's food, right? For maybe nocturnal animals, bats, right? So you're looking at that link, right, in a chain between predator and prey, food, and they're all concentrated in one specific place. Normally they wouldn't be, and it's the light that brings them to one spot. Uh, and it's a, it was a festival of confusion. And so I just, that I probably made that night maybe 30 photographs, maybe a little bit less. And this was the result. And just to me, it looks a bit like fire. It's just, or smoke. And it was just the moths that were caught in that, that band of light, you know. And I'd like to point out also that this is, you know, this is the maybe hard part to digest because we don't get to see the flag. But that's, you know, that idea of marking turf, marking territory, establishing your presence, using artificial light to do it. Um, you know, I don't know if there's a state law in Michigan or if there are federal laws about flags that must be lit at night, right? And it's an American flag, but you know, it's this very strong light to kind of honor a symbol, right? Which is, you know, a metaphor for a country, and at the same time, in an ironic kind of way, when we stop to admire something, the reason we can admire is because of the light, right? And uh, it's got a beneficial component, right? Because it marks an important symbol, and it's got a consequential component because those moths, they don't care about an American flag, right? But a lot of Americans do, right? Like it's an important, it's an important object, right? So there are ways that, and there's a lot of research, there's a lot of engineering that's going into downlighting, to modified light, right, that can allow us, right, to recognize and honor important things, or to mark our territory, right, in ways that doesn't destroy our territory. That's the problem. Like when you want to elevate something, um, at the same time you're pulling other things down, you know.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, you can look at it like that. You can, you know, raise one hand and that's an elevation, or you can lower one hand and this one looks elevated. It's like, it's not magic, right? But the question that I have is um, how do we talk about things? How do we take baby steps forward that are kind of good for the quality of life of all? And it's very complicated, you know. Um, so, you know, swarm
Yeah.
is about what you can and cannot see, you know, because ultimately it affects you. You know, bats are prey for something else, and they help control populations of invasive species, insects. I mean, like, there's all kinds of ways that you could slice and dice this image.
Kind of interesting, because I can see what you talk about, that if it draws something to this point where they would not be naturally, and it weakens that link because they become a buffet where they would have been harder to diminish their population. But did you try any of the compositions with the object that was being lit, the flag? Or did that, just kind of out of curiosity?
Yeah, so I did, but not in this image. Well, no, that's not true. Obviously not in this image, but I think I did take one or two photographs of the flag with the swarm. Um, but it really, I guess if you think about it, right, the American flag is such a powerful symbol. It's red, white, and blue. It has graphics, strong lines, um, diamond diamond-like stars, if you will.
Mhm.
And it's a rectangle. And so um, I, and let's keep in mind also that so much of that would have been blurred because this is an extended exposure, so you wouldn't have seen it as this graphic symbol. But I think we envision a graphic symbol when we see a kind of blurry flag that's moving in a timed exposure. There's no way compositionally that those two, the swarm of the insects and the flag could occupy the same frame and demand the same attention. And so um, it's not, it's, you have a really important, good question. And this goes to the heart of the problem, I think. It's not about the flag, it's about the light and the um, oh, consequential causes of the light.
Mhm.
Uh, and so I felt like I can draw attention to that by eliminating the flag and again putting something front and center.
Yeah, I could definitely see where having the flag would diminish the light that the was reflected off of the moths. Definitely, I
Mhm.
wasn't sure if it would even work compositionally. I was curious.
I didn't
Yeah.
expect this to work as well as it did, but I was really, really pleased.
How much travel and how many images have you made to date? Yeah.
Um, so close to 30,000.
Oh,
I know
wow.
that's what like
Oh,
I shocked myself, but because I don't think it's like asking a painter how many brush strokes did it take for you to finish this painting, and does anybody count that? Like if you're counting the brush strokes, right? Maybe there's some other things going on there, right?
yeah.
And that could be a very conceptual piece. Um, but photography, it's easy for us digitally in some ways because you always have these little digital helpers that are analyzing everything you're doing, right? And so I can say, yeah, I know for a fact there's been over 30,000 because my hard drive can count, my computer, has all this metadata. Um, but, you know, so that's an important question, like how much travel, quite a bit, um, and there's more to come. Um, and you need to travel, I think, to tell this story. And at the same time, traveling leaves a footprint behind, right? It leaves a tailwind of unsustainable activity. And so, you know, uh, I've I was in Photo Kiev in Ukraine at a solo show in their photo festival. I spoke there. Um, it was great. It was a lot of travel. And then I remember when I was organizing the trip, I went straight down almost to. I had to stop back in Kalamazoo, but I went straight down to Peru, um, to a place called Pucallpa after that. And so and then I was in Spain and Madrid, which is actually one of the brightest cities in Europe. It was considered, I think, in 2018, the brightest city, more so than Paris, City of Lights, which shocked me. But I saw it overhead from the Bortle Dark Sky Index, and then I visited Madrid, and I had a solo show at a Gallery Ra del Rey, uh, which was wonderful. But at the same time, I shot when I was there. I photographed a lot,
Mhm.
and it was lit up like a Christmas tree. It's unbelievable. It- there's a place called Retirement Park and a couple of soccer fields, and I mean, could have handheld there. Um, so there's a lot of other places that I want to visit, um, but it's just time and money and grants and other things that I wish that I had, I could get to them. Um, but at the same time, like um, I'm aware of being part of the story as well as telling the story. and it's it it's obvious that um, I can't be, or no one else can be, probably as perfect as they would like to be, right, in their lives. Or sustainable. So there's things that I try to do to offset it. My wife and I have a really big garden, right? I actually brought show and tell, right? But right,
Oh,
um,
wonderful.
so like, right, and eggplants, right? But the, I guess what I'm trying to show and say here is that I want to be, but can't be as perfect as this project allows me, because I have to be unsustainable to tell the story of sustainability.
Mm,
And I know all of the researchers and all of the people that I mentioned earlier, they've written articles about this. They've been they've been accused often by more narrow minds of being hypocritical. Um, and in some ways, I will own that. Yes, there's hypocrisy in unsustainably telling the story of artificial light at night, right? When I have to travel to do it. Um, but I try to offset that with like doing other things in my life, like in the United States right now, having just one car, having a huge garden that we eat from all the time, thinking twice about composting, or just not even thinking, just doing it, and um, doing as many possible things in a way that at least gives me a little more peace of mind that if I can't make my discipline as sustainable as I want it to be, I can intervene in the unsustainable nature of my discipline with sustainable lifestyle.
yeah, now you had said something in a recent interview about wanting to photograph the story without being the story. Is that part of that sentiment there, with trying to
Yeah,
offset with in other ways of your life?
yeah. I mean, that was a question asked in 2019, I believe,
Yeah.
and it's a good question. And I just, you know, I, in some ways, this is a personal story about a public crisis. You can't talk about a public activity without including yourself,
Mhm.
right? So every public story is also a personal one, and in some ways, we're all part of the finger pointing, right? Like you point finger at one thing, but you have more pointing back at yourself. I mean, it's a common metaphor, but there's something very true about that. Um, so, but it's arduous and it's intensive to know where you're making mistakes, where you want to be more mindful. You have to calculate how much energy you might be using. You have to pay attention to how many places you travel to, and how many miles you accrue, whether it's in a car or it's in a plane. Like um, it's in there's more than one way to do it, so there are no solid answers. But one way to try to mitigate the story, or the personal part, is to say, well, like my personal life, like what decisions can I make that do have benefits um, in an immediate way. So you know it, those are like um, repurposing wood, being as frugal and uh, reasonable as I possibly can without threatening the safety and health of my community or myself, is one important value. And I think if everybody composted, if everybody had a garden, like a victory garden, apparently those
Mhm.
were really big around World War II or right afterwards, um, or during. Um, I just think we'd be in a better place. We have
Mhm.
to have faith in the things we can't see. We have to have faith in knowing that if we do things that we cannot measure, but we know that if we did the opposite of it, like leaving the lights on at night, um, or um, driving when we could be walking, we have to have faith that that decision may be infinitesimal, but it's still something that can be a drop in a bucket, and many drops equals, you know, many gallons.
Yeah. One of the things I try to do in my own personal life is I ride my bike to work.
That's great.
And it's been going really well for a year. My kids just started back to school this week, and we're having the whole new system. So I've been riding my bike to work and home, and then having to get a car to drive to pick up my child from school because they don't have a system like for me to like walk up easily, because I could even walk, it's within walking distance. And so I've got to approach them and see if we can get a way to do that.
I would love to see more sidewalks. I think it's fair to say that you probably don't have much of a choice. Like if you had more options, you're doing everything you can, right? Riding your bike is like a huge net positive, you know? And if infrastructure would invest, or if we would invest in infrastructure in ways that helps people in general, the public, move in space and time, I think we'd be in a pretty good place. No one should completely avoid all vices, or no, I don't think it's possible. It's not the human condition, but I think that if everybody would just, so many young people that I talked to in their early 20s, I was speaking with someone the other day, and I said, so you'll be here longer than I will on this planet, and you're obviously thinking a lot about what will make it more accommodating, right? Just for your well-being, so what are your thoughts on that? And he said, well, when your generation dies, we'll be able to figure stuff out, because you guys couldn't get it done, and I kind of smile, and I'm like, well, thank you for that honesty, because our generation, my generation, is realizing some of these things a little bit late, but at least they're being realized. And I think we can see the effects in real time of our decisions, which is beneficial and consequential. So yeah, anything we can do is going to help, propel a safer and more stable future. Riding a bike, walking, but we got to have choices, and we got to have cities to invest in it and back us up. Car culture has not helped us.
No. So I have one more question that I wanted to ask. Your work has been exhibited around nationally and internationally. So it is going to all these different venues, which means it's going through a lot of different gallerists and curators' hands, and they can rearrange and assort them to tell different stories. What, as the artist, what is important to you for the message to get out, even when it's being rearranged by someone else, a third party?
Yeah, I like the way you framed that question. I believe it was Robert Rauschenberg who said, well, I just make the stuff, and everybody else got to figure out how to make it last. Not, he smiled and was like, not my problem. Well, right. Don't you kind of want to guarantee the longevity of your work? And he could just smile his way through anything. So I think about that quote in his contributions, right, to the art world. But I also think that different curators in different countries. So Ukraine, for example, they have the Kharkiv School of Photography. It's very strong in fine art photography, and photography is like a medium for self-expression, and with a strong history of political commentary, opposition to propaganda, has deep roots. From Boris Mikhailov to Yevgeny Pavlov, Igor Manko has really done I think a tremendous job of archiving the contributions that Ukrainians have made to photography. And it's very normal there when I would go that my experience was that, first of all, I had to have the work printed there. So let me start with that. There are times now in photography where you just upload all your files and you cross your fingers and you hope that the work, because we have to avoid customs. So it would be hundreds and hundreds of, I've been through this. I had to pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars, arguably in a bribe, when I arrived in some, I don't know, less regulated places, airports, etc. And it was a rude awakening. So I don't really have too much say in what it looks like when it's printed. And I got to say, when I got to Kiev, the work was beautiful. It was all up on the wall, and it was hung before I even got there. And you know, I've been asked a couple of times, what is the sequence that you prefer? And you know, it's I don't have a preferred sequence. It is random, and there are many ways you could do it. You want to do it geographically. You want to curate that way. Do you want to curate from urban spaces into natural spaces? Like it can go in a lot of different directions. In Peru, look, when I first went down to Peru in 2014, I emailed a residency director and Diana Riesco Lind, and it was in the Amazon basin, and I said, look, I'm gonna have to charge a camera, like I've got batteries and stuff like that, and I'm gonna have to figure that out. So like, just wondering, like, what am I looking at? She's like, could you do us a favor and just bring solar powered Christmas lights, like that you get in the United States? That's, there's no electricity where we're going, and I thought, this is going to be great. That's exactly what I need. I'll take a portable battery and let's roll the dice. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I went back to Peru 2 more times, but they have it is very casual. It is very, they have no formal experience academically, culturally to a point with photography. There are much more important things to deal with. It's once all your basic needs are met, right? Sanitation, stable government, like the list is long, and then art can make it in there. And photography is like way down on that list, and it's expensive. Let's just face it, right? So curators are kind of challenged because when you're dealing with someone who says, well, I took 30,000 photographs, where do you want to start? Now I've whittled 30,000 down to, I believe, 120, so you have to understand, I'm totally exhausted by that point. I don't want to see it anymore. I like, what? I am my eyes are going to fall out of my head. I'm lucky to have a brain still. I have been staring at this work, and now it's time for someone else to manage it. And I love that. I think it's wonderful. It's not my business, right? It really, like, that's the other cool thing in my, from my perspective. Look, I'm a content provider. I'm a maker. I go out, I do the work, and then I deliver it. It's not my house, it's not my space, it's not my turf. Not my call. And like at Buckham right now, there's other shows up, right? Like, so like there are other artists there, and so like that has to be negotiated. I'm happy to be out of that part. Look, I've been through a couple pairs of shoes, and I've traveled close to over 50,000 miles now. So humble bragging, yes. Unsustainable, yes. But look, I'm tired. So that's the benefit, right? Maybe that's the benefit for curators too. And the truth is, I'm totally exhausted if I have to get on planes and trains and buses. I mean, just to get to the Amazon basin, that's like 54, 55 hours of,
Oh, wow.
if you miss a flight,
Hmm.
which I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, just that's what any curator who needs to just, I don't know, explain to the artist that they've got it under control, just tire them out, just make them travel, and I guarantee you life is going to be great. So I enjoy not having any say in that part, you know.
Yeah.
And I also tend to have so much work that there's too much to put on the walls. You know, I saw an artist many years ago. He had too much work, and so they put it on the floor. They put glass on the floor,
Oh.
and he was totally cool with that. It's like, yeah, let's do it. Why not? It was when I lived in Prague, so yeah,
Oh, interesting.
yeah, right. I mean, that's what I said. I was a 25-year-old American kid, and just, oh, well, this is something new,
Yeah, that's
you know.
fascinating. Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm just happy that it gets there and that it gets up on a wall.
Wonderful. Oh, good.
Yeah,
Then we couldn't have done anything
yeah,
opposite.
you
Well,
know,
yeah, this
and
is,
it's random work, so
but it
takes
doesn't
me to a lot of
always
places.
feel random because it is all, with light. But yeah, finding which pieces that work together, and for the viewer to come through. Yes.
Good luck to us all, right?
Yeah.
But that's the point I'm trying to make, is that I would rather not have a discussion about the continuity and the perfection of the diegesis, that's the kind of the thread that holds it all together.
Mhm.
Light does, and if I have to go and point that out and go to a space where there's overabundance of, light, then that's the image.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's my allegation. So, but thank you. It's really great to have this conversation.
This has been really great. I love hearing about your work, and I know light pollution isn't going away anytime soon, but you know,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm glad to stop the project when we become more mindful.
yeah, definitely. So, Bill, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you and learning more about your work. And thank you so much.
Very welcome, and congratulations to Buckham in your move and all of your sponsorship, and for putting together a show about sustainability too. That it's not just my work; it's two other artists, and I was really, if more galleries can pay attention to these things, it's not about it's really not about the work as much as it is the vision of a gallery, of a space to say, we really need to start paying attention to some things. So let's find artists. Let's find artists that are doing that too. They're out there, um, and so um, it's important that galleries and curators look at all three um, spaces, those three doors of the social, economic, and environmental. So thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.